Warren's response to the objection based on infanticide is a bit more complex, and so we're going to need to take a little bit more time to fully understand how she's responding to this objection. The first thing I think that we should say is that Warren does want to differentiate between the morality of abortion and infanticide, or at least the vast majority of cases of infanticide. That is to say, she does want to say that abortion is morally permissible, but infanticide is morally wrong. On the face of it, as the objector has pointed out, it's not clear how she can make that differentiation based on her argument regarding personhood in the 5 criteria. But I just want to make it clear she does want to differentiate between these 2 acts, abortion and infanticide. And so her job is to provide reasoning to show why, according to her argument, abortion is morally permissible, but infanticide is not. Okay. The next thing I think that we need to recognize is that according to Warren, birth does not signify the point at which a being becomes a person. In other words, a newborn infant, according to Warren, is not a person. And that's because a newborn infant, just like a 8-month fetus, does not meet enough of the 5 criteria. A newborn infant is not significantly different than a fetus in terms of the 5 criteria. It may be conscious and sentient in a rudimentary form, but it's not rational. It's not able to communicate in complex ways. It has not developed self-concepts yet. And so a newborn infant is not a person, according to Warren. I just want to make that clear. For Warren, personhood is obtained at some later point in the development of that infant, maybe once it's become a slightly older child. Okay, so now let's move on to the real meat of Warren's response. And one thing that she points out is that when it comes to an infant, a newborn child, members of the moral community, people in society, are able to care for that infant, right? Someone in society could adopt that infant and care for it and value it. Infants are, valuable to society. People in society do value infants. That is to say that even though a newborn infant does not have direct moral standing because it does not meet enough of the 5 criteria and a newborn infant's not a person, a newborn infant does have indirect moral standing. The newborn infant is valued by beings that have direct moral standing, okay? It's a newborn infant is related or connected to beings that have direct moral standing and who actually want to put value on that infant, even though it does not contain that value in and of itself. Now, of course, there are members of the community, persons in society, who also value the unborn fetus, right? Someone like Don Marquis or other conservatives, other people who would consider themselves in the pro-life category, value unborn fetuses. However, according to Warren, there's a significant difference between a fetus and a newborn infant. And that difference is that a fetus is dependent and connected, literally connected to the mother. Okay? And the mother is her own person. The mother is a being who has direct moral standing in and of herself. And so other persons, other members of the moral community cannot come in and value and care for her fetus, primarily because that fetus is part of the mother. And the mother has rights to control her own life, her own freedom, and her own body. Her rights, the mother's rights to her own body, essentially trump the rights of other members of the moral community, because those other members of the moral community do not have the right to force the mother to do anything with her body, i.e., give birth to this fetus, to this child. And so, to be clear, abortion is morally permissible because a mother is a person who meets the 5 criteria and thus has a right to control her own body. In the case of a newborn infant, that infant is no longer dependent on the mother. That infant is no longer connected to the mother. And so there's no good reason to kill that infant. That infant could be valued by other members of society with no burden to the mother or anyone else. And so the infant can have indirect moral standing, but I think we need to say that according to Warren, a fetus does not have indirect moral standing because it is under the control of another person, i.e. the mother. And so, though birth does not signify the point at which a being obtains personhood, birth does signify the point at which a mother loses the ability or the right to control the life and future of that being, the fetus or the newborn infant. And according to Warren, that is the difference in the morality of abortion on the one hand and infanticide on the other. So this is how she responds to the objection based on infanticide.